The growth mindset is really the core tenet and foundational pillar of resilience, where we see challenges as welcome. We lean into challenges. We see them opportunities for growth. We look at setbacks as not just acceptable, but critical for development in our personal life, our career, our professional life. And when people are more intentional about being courageous, and we make courageous decisions to do the things that make us uncomfortable, the things that make us fearful, and you said this before, you are more fulfilled. And that's not just my opinion. That's based in behavioral science and psychology.
Pump Ryan, because today we have officially our second Navy SEAL joining us on the Courageous Podcast. And when your company is called Courageous, for some reason you want to surround yourself with as many Navy SEALs and understand, like, what is it like to go through BUDS and what is it like to build a high performance team?
Yeah, I mean, just an awesome leader. You can tell just by the conversation. And he did a lot in the business transformation space. But what I think is really interesting is covering his new book, Embrace the Suck. And really that's more so about personal transformation and a mindset transformation, and how you can focus on your mental capacity to control things that you do have control over. And just really insightful in terms of how he uses values both for filters in business and how he's taken some of that into his home life as well.
I also love how he said if it wasn't for COVID, he probably wouldn't have got the second book done at the pace that he did. So that acknowledgement, that humanness, even though he is like this big strapping Navy SEAL, that he admits, hey, look, without COVID, maybe I don't get the book done. And so we cover a lot of ground, cover what it means to be a high performance team, the power of discipline. We did disagree on the podcast. I think he called me a loser, right? For having resolutions. I know he didn't really call me a loser, but we do disagree on the power of resolutions. All good. We talk it all about it here now. Let's start where you probably don't want to start. Hey, let's piss off our guests right out of the gate. Really good idea, Berman. Which is where we both bonded, which is over the wars of agency life. And we both choose to call San Diego home. And I was moving on from my last life at the same time that you were moving on from yours. And it's been awesome to watch your trajectory, just to watch how you've gone. You're a serial entrepreneur, you're a purveyor of leadership. How's the ride been?
It's a speeding freight train, my friend, as you well know. Quick backstory, and you know this, but obviously not everyone listening knows this. But after I transitioned out of the SEAL teams, I went to graduate school for my MBA, and then started my first company out of grad school, which was basically an early version of Trulia. It was a home finding search engine. We identified some white space in the non-housing bubble and decided to build a search engine, raised a couple $1 million for that. And then 2008 happened. So that was my first experience with massive pivoting on the battlefield of entrepreneurship, when we realized that business wasn't necessarily going to implode, but obviously that revenue stream was going to start to dry up pretty quickly. When people, as you well know as a marketer, what's the first budget that gets cut when the economy goes to hell, or the industry goes to hell? It's marketing. So we had learned quite a bit around digital marketing, analytics, media buying, just to drive traffic to that search engine. And so what we did was we borrowed money from that first business to start an agency. And that initially was just going to be an alternative revenue stream while that other business started to recover. And we realized quickly that it wasn't going to recover in the way that we needed to. And that was going to be a long haul. So we pretty much rapidly shifted to putting all our time and energy into building the agency, which was IMI at the time. It's been acquired now by REQ. But yeah, it was a wild ride, a lot of fun, and got to work with a lot of great people, and not just in our company, but meeting folks like you, just in the space in general.
Yeah, I talk about the wars of agency life, but maybe that's the wrong metaphor when you're talking to a Navy SEAL combat veteran, and I genuinely mean this, and people I think throw it away, but I am grateful for your service. When people say that, I hope it hits. I know when I say it, I mean it. I wish we all had some sort of a contribution to society, like a mandated year. Cause look, we could talk a whole podcast about America and what we think about America right now, but I love this country, and I wish there was some sort of mandated service. Like, do you think that's the way to go to get us all to like love America again?
Well, I've been asked that question quite a bit. I do think that there's just a massive amount of value in any type of service in any branch, and I do think that when I actually mentor young guys into the SEAL program now, and when I was going through college, I did my undergrad at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and then I actually graduated and was working as a financial analyst at a global firm based in downtown Dallas, and with no real plan or vision of military service. Now, keep in mind, this was right before 9/11. So it was peacetime and just a different world we lived in back then. But at the time, I had a very close friend of mine at SMU who did have a lifelong childhood dream of military service, specifically as a SEAL. He wanted to graduate, join the Navy, and at least attempt to be accepted into the notorious SEAL training pipeline. He and I started training together. For me, it was just a way to stay fit and help him prepare for his arduous journey. But I started reading books about the history of the naval special warfare community and special operations, and our forefathers from the underwater demolition teams in World War II, to where we really cut our teeth as an elite assault force in Vietnam. And I became fascinated with the culture and the history and the mindset and the mental fortitude that is required of our special operators. And so that growing fascination, coupled with the somewhat boring nature of my entry-level financial analyst position, led to the culmination to make a radical shift, engage in some calculated risk, and I joined him on his journey, and the rest is the speeding freight train of life.
Pretty big thing to go through SEAL training. Both my grandfathers were in the Navy. That's how we ended up in San Diego, lieutenant commander and a chief. And
nice.
My dad worked for NASCO for 40 years and built all of the ships. So my family has a long history of it, a lot of respect for the military. But I'm curious, going through SEAL training, and I think you have a friend in there, David Goggins, which we'll talk about when we get to your new book a little bit. But just what is that like? I know we hear so much about like the physical side of it and what they do to you, but I'm more curious on like what you went through mentally.
Sure.
And what that did for you, coming back out into civilian life and really. I'm assuming you kind of parlayed this into your personal life and really the new book, embrace the suck. So can you just talk about like some of the challenges you faced going through BUD/S, going through training, what it did and how it helped your mental capacity as a human being?
Sure. When I made the decision to go all in and started training to prepare for the SEAL pipeline, obviously I realized I would have to go through a significant, mental, physical, and mindset transformation, really changing the entire environment of the world around me so that I could put better constraints on myself, limit distractions, and focus on what was in my control. And I had the same questions that, my mentees asked me, what's the hardest part? How do you get through it? Yada, yada, yada. And it's a really fascinating social experiment because it's a different mental and physical journey for everyone. It's a different emotional journey. And because we've always been trying since 9/11 to grow the ranks of the SEAL teams, the Naval Special Warfare community has actually spent years and invested millions of dollars in market research, so to speak, to identify the cognitive, mental, emotional, and physical attributes of students more likely to successfully navigate that funnel. And the data doesn't really paint the picture or tell the narrative that one might think of, extreme physical prowess and intellect. And while, of course, fitness and intellect play a role, it really comes down to the less measurable attributes around grit, resilience, mental fortitude, and most importantly, passion and a deep emotional connection to the idea of serving, not just in the military per se, but serving as a SEAL. If you think about in any walk of life or any goal we've ever accomplished personally or professionally, all of those goals had some adversity, pain, and suffering associated with them. And it was the emotional connection and that passion for achieving that goal that drives us through the most arduous times. And the students who go through the pipeline who fail, because it is a roughly 85 to 90% attrition rate, are typically the ones that don't have that deep passion, that they make assumptions. They're just, I hear this phrase, well, I'm going to become a SEAL. Well, no, most likely you're not going to become a SEAL, statistically speaking. And what I've taken from that is, that's helped me as an entrepreneur, that's helped me in just other types of goals, personally and professionally, is personal accountability and discipline. We find that disciplined people are more fulfilled because they achieve more of the goals they set, because they put better constraints on themselves and they avoid temptation or the shiny objects and opportunities. And I put big air quotes around opportunities that take us down a path that we don't want to be on. And so really discipline, personal accountability, and also, of course, the ability to manage stress and anxiety a lot better, because if someone's not trying to blow my head off, then usually it's a problem that we can find a solution to.
I think that's really important. And we know that passion is a big intrinsic motivator. And I think just the times that we're sitting in, personal accountability, obviously discipline to manage your day when you're working from home and manage that stress and anxiety is such a big topic right now. And I love the focus that's going into mental health. It's finally bubbling up, because we talk about physical health all the time and there's so much focus on it, but you write this book, Embrace the Suck, and it's more about personal transformation than business transformation, which I believe is kind of where you were in Talking Point Leadership. And I'm curious, why did you pivot to the personal side? And two, I've heard you talk about values that you hold with your family: continuous improvement, passion, integrity. So passion's in there again, in the pursuit of excellence. So with this new book, why the pivot to the personal side, and how important are values and do they play into that?
Absolutely. Yeah, the first book, Taking Point, as you know, is a book about leading through change, organizational transformation, basically sort of a modern take on and a Navy SEAL twist on leading a team or organization through significant change, whatever that might be. And after leaving IMI, and selling out of that business, my first step to the new plan of building a new organization was to write that first book. So the book, Taking Point, is designed to be, in large part, the foundational principles of my current business, which is Taking Point Leadership. And we're a leadership and organizational development consulting firm. And of course, what we see, and you guys know this very well, that you can't enhance the performance and desired outcomes of a team until you continually enhance the performance, mindset, behaviors, and rituals of the people on the team, specifically leaders and managers of others. And so by diving into some of that, and some of the principles that we work with our clients on are actually in the book when it comes to enhanced performance and better planning, better execution, better debriefing with ourselves. And so I thought it might be interesting to at least start to look into the genre of personal transformation and self-help, for lack of a better phrase. And I'd never read a self-help book before. So I was like, oh, I should probably do some research and check these things out. And obviously, it's probably arguably one of the most popular genres of books out there. And what I found were many, many great books and great narratives and great storytelling, but also in way, and this is me speaking for myself with the types of content I like to digest, is not very actionable books out there in that space. So I thought it might be interesting to dive into a project. And admittedly, I didn't know that 2020 was going to suck so bad.
Yeah.
The timing, selfishly, is wonderful. And of course, that's not to discount the horrible year that many people have had financially, personally, the loss of life, loss of business. But in all honesty, I hope it does provide, because of the timing, to be a source of inspiration, a tool for people to better continually navigate these murky waters of uncertainty that we are and will continue to be in. People need to, I think everybody gets it now, but we're hearing that phrase, well, when this is all over, when we come out of this thing, or when things go back to normal. There's no going back to normal. Much of what we've all seen is wrapped in permanency. But again, amidst adversity, there really is opportunity. We've seen businesses go through massive digital transformation efforts that would take a year or two to successfully implement. That they've done in a week, or recapitalizing the business, reassessing their resource needs, or even on the personal side, adversity drives creativity, it drives innovation, and it drives really reassessing the things that truly matter to us. I know a lot of people have shed a lot of waste and a lot of activities and things that we spend time and money and resources on that we realize, well, that stuff's really not all that important to me. So it's really, in a way, with the right mindset, a path towards enlightenment and greater wisdom, because we're all face any types of adversity and obstacles, from the day we're born to the day we pass on to hopefully something better, and learning how to lean into it and navigate those obstacles better is a source towards really greater fulfillment and living a happier, more meaningful life.
So Brent, this is even going to be a silly question or a layup question, but I have to ask, because the actual title of the book is Embrace the Suck, the Navy SEAL Way to an Extraordinary Life. And do you think most people think they can't achieve an extraordinary life? Like, do we put constraints on ourselves or feel it's not possible?
I think it comes down to what we define as success, or what we define as fulfilling, and what we define as meaningful when it comes to our career, our personal life, our relationships, family, and whatnot. And again, the book is in no way, shape, or form designed to teach anyone how to be a Navy SEAL. It is trying to adapt some of the rituals, behaviors, mindsets, and actions required in the rough world of special operations in order to be more intentional in the fine art and craft of expanding our comfort zone, learning how to lean into adversity as opposed to shying away from it, accepting pain and suffering instead of always trying to seek pleasure in every single thing we do. We see that in different cultures around the world. In the West over here, we kind of seek pleasure and avoid pain at all costs. Whereas in other cultures, Eastern cultures, et cetera, they see pain, suffering and adversity as not just acceptable, but a critical piece of navigating our way down that meandering path towards a greater life. So yeah, I think most of us, the hopeful ones out there, do believe that we can achieve some level of an extraordinary life. But the challenge is we shy away so much from the adversity piece of it that sometimes it's less achievable.
Yeah, I like what you said about just being intentional. I think, we're all marketers here at some point were, right? And just staking a position and holding that is a big undertaking, right? And a lot of people can waver. And I think there is a big problem, like in corporate America, around avoidance and blame. And what we like to talk about, we like to think about it in terms of fears. Like, how do you face your fears head on? And we know that when you do that, it creates a sense of freedom, right? And that's we define courage as knowledge plus faith plus action, and you need all three working together. And coming from you, I'm wondering, and this is really interesting because you've been in the military. Why does courage matter?
I think you really hit the nail on the head when you think about how critical courage is just to navigate any area of life. But going back to being intentional about it, one of the chapters in the book is titled "Do Something That Sucks Every Day." And you think, well, what does that mean? that doesn't sound fun. But it really goes back to being bold and having the courage to face those fears, identify the things in our life, personally or professionally, that make us cringe, the things that make us uncomfortable. We have that saying in the SEAL teams: get comfortable being uncomfortable. And really, it's kind of a fundamental piece to having a growth mindset. We work with our clients on motivation theory and obviously leadership development. But one of the things we teach is sort of that difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And the growth mindset is wrapped in courage and courageous action, courageous thought, courageous faith and purpose. Whereas, the person with the fixed mindset obviously scores a little lower on the scale of resilience, grit, and mental fortitude, because we say to ourselves, well, I am who I am. My skills are my skills. My shortcomings are my shortcomings, and effort and courage are not necessarily going to help me. So therefore, I will not engage in courageous action. I will not take calculated risk. I won't lean into adversity. I'm just going to stay in my comfort little zone and live the life that I believe was just given to me. Whereas a growth mindset is really the core tenet and foundational pillar of resilience, where we see challenges as welcome. We lean into challenges. We see them opportunities for growth. We look at setbacks as not just acceptable, but critical for development in our personal life, our career, our professional life. And when people are more intentional about being courageous, and we make courageous decisions to do the things that make us uncomfortable, the things that make us fearful, and you said this before, you are more fulfilled. And that's not just my opinion. That's based in behavioral science and psychology. It is more fulfilling to live a life that has a little bit more risk in it, to make the decisions that we don't want to regret. That's I kind of end the book with, the last chapter says, we're all going to die, so get off your ass and execute. And essentially, it kind of falls back to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Number 2 being, think with the end in mind. Design your own personal exit strategy now, not tomorrow, and start managing that list of things that we say we don't want to regret right now. We have a significant impact on the things we don't want to regret when this short life comes to an end, the relationships we should have mended, the career choices we should have made but didn't because people said that's too risky, the courageous decisions that and the bold acts that we wish we had done, but we were too fearful and therefore we didn't. Make a list and then execute that list so that you can at least limit that list of life regrets when this short little life we're living in concludes.
I think that's wonderful. Sometimes just making the list and getting through that is just such a relief. It's like a big stress relief, and facing those things immediately versus avoiding them and like building some internal narrative, it can be so helpful. And I think that's a great tool. I've heard you talk, excuse me, a little bit about just, again, going back to values that you hold with your kids at home. And I'm curious, is your leadership style any different at home than at work and business? And do they intersect at all? And maybe you can just talk about, how you hold true values on the business side and how those play at home as well.
Sure. The values piece is something I wanted to put in the book because, we think about building a great team or a great organization, whether that be a special operations unit, a winning sports team, a high performing business organization. The organizations that get it, and you guys know this, they develop a great culture that has foundational core values, guiding principles, supporting behaviors, and accountability mechanisms to ensure that we understand the behaviors and choices that we expect from ourselves and from others. And so if great organizations do that, well, why wouldn't we do that for ourselves? Why wouldn't we do that for our families? So that you can use that as a tool to put better constraints on yourself, to avoid temptation, avoid distractions, and avoid spending time on things that are outside of our control. And so one of the things that I focus on is realizing, what values you have. I tell a story in there about, people making seemingly good choices as an entrepreneur or in business based on revenue generation and profitability and shareholder value, when really, they're making choices at other people's expense, or they're sacrificing other seemingly more important things in life, like family, like relationships, like their marriage. And so, I wanted to really touch on the idea of values. And it wasn't, we haven't always done this, and so it was a few years ago, we realized, well, gosh, we should probably have a set of guiding principles for our family. So that helps, my wife and I in our communication style and overcoming obstacles and challenges or things that we disagree on. It helps your parenting style because you can talk about those values when you're celebrating wins or when you're using those as a coaching moment. Organizations that, for example, that really have authentic values talk about them all the time. They storytell around those values. When there's a big win, they say, let's look at how this associated with the core values and behaviors we expect of ourselves and others in this organization. And obviously, when there's a catastrophic loss, you can also fall back and say, well, where did we fall short when it comes to these values and guiding principles? We clearly missed the mark on something. So I think it's really important too, for a healthy marriage and a healthy home environment. And, we have 4 kids. I don't know if you know this, Brian, but I just had another baby a week ago. And so I need all the help and guiding principles that I can so that I can make good choices as a parent.
Yeah. So how do these values come to life at home for you? I'm curious if work Brett and home Brent are the same. Is it the same person?
We're actually kind of different. My wife would argue that she's the tough one, and you would think, oh, he's a Navy SEAL, is very militant at home, which I could be better. I could do a better job of more consistent parenting and, playing the role of bad guy, whereas my wife thinks she's always playing the role of bad guy. And again, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We can be inconsistent with, with having values, using those values and talking about them. But really, it does help us in the fact that we can talk about the values when we're using that as a coaching moment or when we're trying to course correct behavior as needed. And so we try to do that, as much as we can. Now I'm different in my leadership and management style, in a business environment than I am at home. And I'm not, the type of leader manager that you might think. Now, when I transitioned out of the SEAL teams, my management style was quite different. And I don't know if you guys know this, but you apparently can't manage millennials the same way you do a SEAL platoon. Who knew? But it's true. So I've actually had to, work a lot on transitioning my own leadership and management style, both at work, but also at home too, because my wife, God bless her, is really consistent in giving me constructive feedback.
Yeah, it sounds like my wife is very similar as well.
Ditto.
I can't help but think about like the level of awareness that we all need to be successful. And I'm thinking about, for me, usually I try to have like a word of the year, and I'm a resolutions person. That I know a lot of people don't like resolutions. I like a trigger on the calendar that forces me to reset and rethink. And this year I couldn't actually decide on one word, and I ended up with two. One of them was discipline, and the other one was relationships. And to me, like the discipline side is sort of my reminder to stay focused if I'm going to be successful. If I have clarity and purpose, and I have to have discipline. But the relationships word, and I love what you said about that already. To me, it's not just like a relationship with other people. It's a relationship with myself. It's a relationship with food. It's a relationship with my children. And so, I'm trying to stay disciplined about keeping these at the forefront of everything that I'm doing. Look, you just launched this book. You're on this path now to bring this to the world. Is there like a specific, do you like have a word that you're focused on for this year for you or mantra?
I think it kind of goes back to accountability. Might use the term ownership because it's funny that you said resolutions, because I joke in the book. I say this is a joke that New Year's resolutions are for losers. And when I was on the Today Show,
just great, Ryan.
I was on the Today Show last week, and they said, "No, you said something interesting in the book. We're right here at the end of the year, and you said New Year's resolutions are for losers." And obviously, what I mean is, and any goal should be measurable, concise, and time bound. And but really, it goes back to, and I think you're getting at this when we talk about discipline, for example. It's about making more consistent, small, incremental choices in our life. To your point, when it comes to food or alcohol or relationships or how we approach life and work, and by kind of eating the elephant one bite at a time, so to speak, we can be in more or less a constant state of improvement. Oftentimes, we try to bite off too much or make choices that are too much of a radical shift. That's where people can often fall short because they were biting off a little more they can chew all at once. So just learning to be disciplined when it comes to consistent sleep patterns, or when it comes to your diet, or when it comes to fitness and wellness activities, those things all are probably more important now than ever. With COVID and with everything going on in the world, and leading and managing remote teams and working from home, and those of us with kids and those types of challenges, where we realized that, and a lot of our clients agree, some of us are working a lot more now than we were before, not less, because we're not commuting, or we're not traveling, or we're not in an airplane, or we're not in hotels, going to conferences and things like that. We're strapping in, logging into Zoom at 7 a.m. Next thing you know, it's 7 p.m. and you haven't taken a break. You didn't work out. You didn't eat, or you're staying up too late, or doing those things. It really comes back to discipline is all about balance too. And I think that's what you're referring to as well when it comes to disciplined mind, disciplined body, disciplined decisions, when it comes to how we approach, our career and our personal life.
So important. And I know for myself, those clarity breaks, like those forced times when you just like, okay, I need to step away from Zoom. I need space to think and create is so important. And I know even for myself, I like to think that I'm in shape and keep that pretty consistent, but you have those days where you're having this mental battle, and it's like, oh, let's just order pizza and watch movies versus do yoga and eat something healthy and actually cook for yourself, right? It's so easy to let that slide. I'm curious, how do you manage that in your brain? Are there, you talked about, actually having tangible tools to work. Could you share some of those with the audience that you've gone through or that you share in the book that can be helpful?
Sure. I think that, and I think we would all agree, if you look on various points in our life, because we're humans and we are inconsistent when it comes to, discipline and personal accountability. And I think when I look back on areas of my life where I was the most fulfilled, the happiest, felt the best, made the best decisions, was when I was really regimented, for example, in my daily routine, in my morning routine, in my fitness and wellness activities, in how I approach the businesses that I was running, how I interacted with people and prioritized relationships. And I look back, I was like, wow, I was really fulfilled, really happy then. And then life comes into play and we get distracted, or there's stress at work, or let's say hypothetically a global pandemic hits and we all have to make significant choices and pivoting on the battlefield of life. But really, and I get asked this a lot because people are like, oh, you're a SEAL, you must have a very, very specific daily routine. And not always. I don't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning like Jocko and work out for 4 hours and things like that. My wife would never let me get away with that. But but it really is about having a very consistent schedule. What I've seen too, and I'm not speaking about just myself, but people who are more successful, however you want to define success, or more focused, have a very similar routine Monday through Monday, not Monday through Friday, and then it's, everything goes to hell on the weekend and you're sleeping in and eating bad. It's a very consistent schedule when it comes to diet and workout routine and work. And there's just a lot of balance in there. So it really comes down to, in its simplest form, is having a solid balance and making sure that we are disciplined in how we design that schedule. I'm big on planning. I'm big on simple things like to-do lists and doing your to-do list the day before. Not the morning of, but making sure you've wrapped everything up for the day, making that to-do list. It's really about planning for tomorrow today, because life moves, at the speed of war. And next thing you know, because people talk a lot about, well, I gotta find my purpose and what my real passion is and all this thing. And then years go by and they haven't done anything. I guess they were trying to find themselves. So being disciplined in your routine, being a good list maker, having to-do lists, and being relatively regimented. I know that sounds kind of lame and boring to some of the listeners, but like we've talked about, people who are more regimented and more disciplined are happier and they're more fulfilled because they achieve or exceed more of the goals they set.
Brent, I'm here to go on the record and say thank you, because for the last year my team has been giving me a hard time. On my laptop, I have a sticky note that has my weekly calendar. Right. Yeah. So I can see it. Now my calendar's online too, but this is my to-do list. And I've never explained it that way to anybody. So they're like, oh, Berman has this. He's so outdated. He's got his calendar on his sticky note. And I'm like, that's exactly what it is. It is my way of framing. So I know what's coming up next and what I have to prepare for, whether it's today, tomorrow, or something else for the rest of the week. I get so much shit for it, honestly, from the team. But that's exactly what it is.
We just want to know what's on your calendar. You can't see it on your sticky note. So yeah,
I'm the same way.
Yeah. And honestly, Berman, I have 12 sticky notes on but I use OneNote. I like OneNote. Anyway, so Brent, question. Time with kids, having a regimented schedule, kids don't care about that, right? And you have a newborn now. I just went through that as well. And so it's hard to keep that schedule when you're, not getting the sleep you need. And I think for a lot of people that don't have kids, you have a lot more freedom, right? And time, like you get to control your time a little bit more. When you have a family, you have less control over your time. So can you maybe just share, I know like you're doing planning, but like, how are you managing that, especially with, a brand new one? Because like time isn't your own, right? It's like, it's really driven by these little people who don't have any concept of time.
Yeah. It's funny you mention that because when I was promoting the first book, I did an interview and there was an article on a blog called My Morning Routine. And again, going back to what we're talking about, discipline and being regimented in your schedule, with my background, people assume that I have a very, very regimented schedule all the time that never changes, which is just not realistic at all. And then working family, working children. And now with a lot of us working remote or working from home, it's even more chaotic because you're right, my office in the house is more of an open floor plan. It doesn't have a door on it even. The kids are just coming in whenever they want. They're asking for this snack, or can you come play outside and play basketball with me? Or can you do this? And then also, because a lot of us working from home, we're more available, so to speak, for lack of a better phrase, to be pulled in many, many different directions. So in all transparency, I found it to be quite challenging. Prior to COVID, I was traveling all the time. A lot of times in the world of speaking and consulting, it's somewhat seasonal, but during busy seasons, I'm traveling almost every single week. And obviously that's not sustainable. That's not desirable. And part of our 2020 strategic initiative, one of them was to get me more off the road, hire more people, put the team out there in front of the clients more. And all it took was a little global pandemic and daddy's home all the time. And now I'm not a medical doctor per se, but all of a sudden I stop traveling and we get pregnant. Hashtag COVID baby. But it really is about good communication with your spouse or significant other on setting expectations, and then also being willing to be adaptive and to adjust, knowing that that we still have responsibilities, obviously first and foremost to our spouse or to our children, and that really does need to take precedent. So I found it better to set expectations. My wife and I'll sit down, maybe it's Sunday evening or whatever, and we'll talk about the week. I'll talk about my work schedule. I'll talk about when I'm going to be at the office or when I'm going to be working from home. And we go through our calendars together. And also, which has a lot to do with, okay, who's taking the kids to school, who's taking the kids to horseback riding, and setting those expectations kind of on a weekly or daily basis has helped us a lot, especially amidst COVID and being more available to do a lot of that other stuff. That's helped us quite a bit because it's a little messy at first where I'm like, I'm in the office, but pretend that I'm at the office. Please. That didn't work at all.
Well, there's so many ways to communicate when life isn't on a pandemic. So sometimes it's a text or it's a quick conversation, or I'll even all of a sudden my Facebook DM, I'll have a message from my wife. And it's okay.
From the other room.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. And so, yeah, in some ways it's just about the power of communication, right? And we think we're over communicating, but it's just communicating to the other person. Brent, you're the second Navy SEAL we've had on the show. Do you know Jeff Boss? The name ring a bell?
Oh, yeah. He was in the class right ahead of mine, the class 234 that they did the Discovery Channel documentary about.
And so I think he had mentioned I think he had an injury, so he didn't make it to the first pass, and then he was really pissed off, made it to the second pass. But when he talks about the ringer of buds, and the mental stress, the physical stress, and even the emotional stress, and in some ways you kind of need almost all three when it comes to creating high performance teams. Yeah. But the physical part, can you touch that with the work team? Do you go there with when you're working with you're in the boardroom, do you actually nudge on physical?
I do actually. And I know Jeff has kind of a similar philosophy. I've read some of his work, and he believes he still has a Forbes leadership column like I do. And I do go into the importance, and I've written a couple articles about this when it relates to physical, and emotional wellness as it relates to greater success in work and greater success in life. Obviously SEAL training is a radical example. Obviously there's a significant mental side, a significant physical side. I mean, take Hell Week, for example, just for context, the training pipeline is well over a year long and with a very, very high attrition rate, but you wash out the majority of your class within the first few weeks of BUDS. And then you go on to advanced training after BUDS. BUDS is an acronym, of course, stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. And the fourth or fifth week, sometimes it's changed a little bit, but let's call it the fifth week is Hell Week. You've already lost half your class just leading up to Hell Week, in large part for injuries, illness, and the fact that people apparently don't like being cold, wet, sandy, and hypothermic all day and night. It's just not something we seek out in life typically. And And that's one thing that I thought of when I sat down. I'm like, all right, if I'm going to even come close to being successful in this endeavor, I need to really have a plan and think about what is in my control. We oftentimes spend a lot of time and energy in a wasteful way, focusing on things that are out of our control or worrying about things that are outside of our control. But I knew one thing that was in my control was my fitness level. And not just to pass the physical tests to get in with the running and the swimming and the calisthenics, but to also prepare my body. And I knew that a lot of the mental elements and the stress, the anxiety, the fear of failure, and what physical pain does to your mental state, much of that was going to be out of my control. But what was in my control is pushing my body as hard as I possibly could in a strategic manner, so I don't break myself. But when I quit my finance job, for example, my buddy and I from college, we moved up to Crested Butte, Colorado, and we trained for an additional 6 months for about 10 to 12 hours a day at very, very high altitude, about 11,000 feet, to really get our bodies into the best physical condition that we could, which we also knew that mind and body are very intimately connected. So the more we can push ourselves physically, you're gradually building greater levels of grit, mental fortitude, just by having the discipline to push yourself through that physical pain. And that, of course, helps you develop greater levels of resilience as well. And at the same time, fitness and wellness are critical to effective leadership, effective communication, clarity of thought and mind and decision making. I've always pushed at wellness activities, and we had a lot of wellness strategies. For example, at my last company at IMI, really tied into our HR systems. We wanted to have a culture of wellness and fitness. I used to run boot camps for the employees at lunchtime and do all these different things because I believe that fitness and physical wellness has a direct and measurable impact on our ability to succeed in other endeavors in life.
Yeah, I believe that too. I mean, you can just tell after you put your body through something hard, you feel rewarded, and you can see the nice thing is controlling that. You can see the reward over time if you stick with it too. Question on courage. What do you believe is the most courageous thing that you've done in your professional life so far?
I think that one story that I like to tell. This is just off the top of my head, but it's an interesting story about leadership and making very tough decisions. And that's one thing in business and entrepreneurship, or being a leader or manager of people in any team environment, whether it's whatever walk of life that is. Effective leadership is in large part about having the courage to make those tough decisions, whether it's a battlefield commander in the midst of combat, or making a tough choice, within your business. One of those moments was we were continuing to grow the business. We were a very sales-driven organization, and our board of directors and shareholders had desired very aggressive growth goals when it came to revenue and profitability. And we had gone down this path, and we had acquired some great clients. And one of our largest client, which was a bit of a risk because that client made up about 30% of our revenue, which is a risk in and of itself. And that's just kind of typically known as a best practice no-no in business, yet we really wanted that revenue. So all in, let's just do the best possible job. And they were the worst organization to work with. And, when going back to values, for example, when you have a set of guiding principles and core values in a team or organization, in a perfect world, every decision you make should be based on those values. And we were straying pretty wildly from what those values were just by working with this client. And they weren't doing anything shady, but they treated our team like absolute garbage. I had 4 or 5 people at any given time, some of my top performers, because of course we put all our top performers on our biggest client, with one foot out the door. And the tough thing was that, going back to accountability and ownership, well, whose fault is that? It's my fault. As the leader, as the CEO, it's my fault that I'm allowing this client, because they're paying us so much money, to treat our team like garbage. I had lost sight of the guiding principles that are supposed to define all the decisions that I make, especially as the leader. So it really came down to making a tough choice. And what that choice was, and no entrepreneur likes to do this, but eventually, and it was tough because the board had very differing opinions on what decision needed to be made. And I fought relentlessly to get rid of this client. I was terrified because I'm like, oh gosh, that's 30% of our revenue. And what we realized was because, if you look at utilization, for example, because of how bad they were treating us and how much free stuff they were getting, but from a time perspective too, because the team was just saying, yes, sure, no problem. They weren't even profitable. We were wasting so many resources, time, and even on that client that we eventually did make the decision. Because I had to really, really push for this, is to fire the client. And I only label that now as courageous because looking back, I do remember how fearful I was of that. But the interesting thing was that what happened after firing that big, awful client? Nothing, only good stuff. Morale went up, nobody quit, and we were actually more profitable getting rid of them as an organization. But in the moment, it was scary because, I'm thinking about, your organization's revenue or profitability, my ability to generate income personally because, our executive comp packages were based on quarterly profitability. So even selfishly thinking about, well, am I going to lose money, if we make this tough choice? But it was the right thing to do because also forget my emotional connection to the business, but what about my team? I had lost sight of the fact that it's my job as a senior leader to first and foremost take care of them.
I mean, I think this is an awesome way to sum this conversation up because I found, like you, most often in life, when we're afraid, deep down, we kind of know the right decision. and the difference is whether you do it or you don't. And to your point, what I love about declaring your values and having that work done beforehand is it should make it unemotional. It's hard in the moment, right? But it should make it unemotional because when you go back to them, you're like, these are filters for decision making. Am I making the right move? Are we not making the right move? And we're kind of back full circle. How do you keep the team happy and motivated and optimized? It's by honoring the values that they signed up for in the first place. And we talk about it too. We sit here calling ourselves courageous and then we take banner ads only, we're doing safe work out of the gate. My team's going to be asking questions and they're like, this isn't what we signed up for. And right, I wish we had more time. I love the thing I love the most about you is that you're not, what a surprise, a Navy SEAL that's versatile, but you're a keynote speaker, you're an author, but most of all of that is rooted in you're a practitioner and you've rolled up your sleeves as an entrepreneur and done it for yourself and done it for your clients. So however we can support you down the line, I think when we're called courageous and you're called taking point, we should find more ways to
Seems like there might be something there.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll figure it out. And thanks so much for your time today, Brent.
Oh, thank you guys so much. I had a blast. I think it was a really good conversation and let's definitely, let's keep talking.
Congratulations. Hey, embrace the suck, people. Get through it.
If you enjoyed the episode, please give us 5 stars, subscribe, and leave us a comment.
If you like what you just heard, sign up for your weekly dose of courage at returnoncourage.com.